And it was a great idea, and Corky Thornoff, who was the pilot, he came over to London and we had a chat about it.
It was a real plane, yes, it was absolutely amazing.
But getting the plane through the hangar requires some special effects magic.
It was built up with lots of models and stunts and foreground miniatures.
You can actually put an object in the foreground and make it merge with a building in the background so it appears to be part of that building.
We used a third scale door and a third scale model plane.
When the plane actually enters the garage, the door that's nearest to the camera is in fact a miniature and was placed about 4 or 5 feet from the camera to hide the existing door.
We had the hangar way over in the distance, the real hangar.
Between the foreground miniature and the building, there's probably 50, 60 yards.
We had a model on a line that we took through.
And it worked so well, we did the same thing when it exited from the hangar.
To film the jet inside the hangar requires another clever solution.
We put the actual BD jet on a car, just on a pole.
John, a very clever engineer, and he got a XJ6 Jaguar, and he stripped the top off the Jaguar.
One of my assistants in the back was working a hydraulic system to bank the plane from side to side.
We were able to actually put Roger Moore inside this thing and fly it through the hangar.
I always prayed that everybody else knew what they were doing, and they weren't like me. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just sitting there.
I would drive the car into the hangar at about 75 miles an hour.
The reason you don't see the pole arm and the Jaguar is because I put lots of figures in the foreground running back left and right to left.
We used the wing to hide the pole arm for the car, and as long as the camera was positioned cleverly with people and things in foreground, you'd never see the car.
They had trouble with the braking system.
And it took a few seconds to realise that the throttle on the car had jammed wide open, and were doing very graceful 360 pirouettes across the grass, straight towards one of Her Majesty's Air Force's planes.
John Richardson avoids an accident, but still must destroy the hangar in miniature.
It's probably only 12th scale, which is quite small. All of the corrugated metal sheets were made of plastic, but they were all stuck on individually, so they would come off individually. But each one was only, 4 inches long.
Meanwhile, another unit films aerial action for Octopussy's climax.
That was an incredible sequence. We shot most of it in the United States.
They wanted us to do a fight on top of an airplane, and we weren't sure this was even possible.
We built handles to hold on to, and we had hidden parachutes.
I came up with an idea that if we put a handle into the paint scheme, you wouldn't see the handle and it looked like the actors are just holding on to the side of the airplane. We had a door on the Twin Beach that could be removed in flight. And so we would always take off in a normal manner, pull the door inside, climb up on the aircraft, do our stunts, and then crawl back into the aircraft, shut the door, and land.
Back in England, the 1st and 2nd units combined forces to shoot scenes of Bond on Octopussy's train.
Up in the Nene Valley, there's a train museum that has, several miles of trains and tunnels. You get rolling stock that's from different countries.
It was a very, very difficult sequence to shoot.
Moore also has to do a bit of stunt driving.
We first of all constructed some special wheels so that it could actually drive along the track. I remember the first day taking Roger for a test drive down the track in it, and Roger handled it pretty well.
Richardson also stages a head-on collision.
We built a huge air cannon, and as the train drove through, we fired the air cannon, sort of literally just clipped the front of the car with the train.
In mid-September, while the 2nd unit remains behind, the 1st unit returns to Pinewood to shoot selected interiors. Then, after a week in the studio, the 1st unit departs for India.
It was a beautiful place to be shooting, with all these palaces and the lake and boats and lights at night and camels and elephants and all the cows with their bells crossing the road. I mean, it was quintessential India.
Oh, India was magical for me. I never knew I was going to feel that way about it. It actually had such an impact on me for a long time after we left.
Roger and the other artists were staying at this superb hotel made of marble.
John Glenn decided that the camera crew and myself should stay with him in some sort of farm.
One of the artists went home, and Tom Pevsner, that was the producer, said, would you like that room? He knew I wasn't too happy where we were staying. And so I went into this palatial room. This was sheer heaven. I'm going to become an actor next time I'm born into this world.
The Maharana rolls out the red carpet for the film crew.
He was very hospitable and entertained us royally.
Quite often we would be invited for dinner at the Marahanas.
He had pictures of himself with President John F. Kennedy and other dignitaries.
And he would serve us his own rose wine.
It was so delicate.
And it took some unbelievable amount of rose petals in order to make this wine.
But all is not wine and roses for the crew. On September the 22nd, they begin shooting the taxi chase. Local interest poses a problem.
We were besieged by crowds in India. I mean, you know, wall-to-wall people. We'd ask for 5,000 extras and 10,000 would turn up.
There is no way that you can control the public's access.
You can't sometimes see what you're filming for people. It's a big problem.
I was actually scared to go out on the street when they were doing that.
Things can get quite hairy. You never know what's happening. You can never ever be sure a shot is going to be safe because you don't know which goat will run out of which alley at which point.
Suddenly, completely spontaneous and unrehearsed, a local on a bicycle went right between the sword plate and went through unscathed without even looking left or right. He thought that conditions were normal.
The crowds are not the only thing that pose a challenge for Roger Moore.
Bond is not supposed to sweat. Bond's hair doesn't get untied. He's always in a dinner jacket. Everybody is wandering around in tennis shorts or swimming trunks. But Jim Bond is always out there with the tie, the smart suit. I was really more exhausted changing shirts, so he didn't look as though I was perspiring.
Back in England, the second unit continues shooting the train sequence. Doubling Roger Moore for much of the scene is veteran stuntman Martin Grace.
He's travelling along beside the train, and from that point I take over and do the transfer onto the side of the train, which was, to me, was like sort of quite simple. You know, it was something well within my capability.
Martin was a really expert stuntman.
Unlike a lot of other train jobs that I've seen, the actual roof was convexed, which made it much more difficult from the point of view you didn't have a flat roof with railings on the side. Climbing down the side, climbing underneath the train, coming out and climbing back up again. We'd been doing that for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we had a helicopter for 2 days.
Martin had surveyed the track, and Arthur was shooting from a helicopter. I think he was operating the camera himself.
I know the first day that the weather wasn't very good, so we didn't even get a lot done. And the second day was the fatal day.
No matter how much one practices and how much you kind of go over the area, you know, there's always something that can go wrong.
I was climbing along the side of the train, looking through the window. Had I been able to look forward, I would have seen whatever the obstacle was and pull in, you know, or miss it.
They went up a track they'd never rehearsed on before.
And because the camera was still rolling and nobody had called cut, he entered the unexplored section of the railway line, still hanging outside the carriage.
I was in the helicopter at that time, shooting it from the air. Poor Martin, he misjudged the timing between places.
There was a concrete stanchion by the side of the track, which hit him in the thigh, took away most of the flesh from his thigh, and it cracked his hip, broke his leg, rib, and arm, and he still held on to the train.
It's a tribute to the man's strengths that he didn't fall off the train and fall under the wheels.
Martin survived it, but he spent 6 months in hospital.
Immediately, Cubby and I went to